Alrighty. Okay, let's see here. This should be working. Change my volume mixer so I don't get notifications. Alrighty. Hello, Matter Monkey. See, I tried to get the, I really tried to get the results thing working on a Excel, but apparently for some reason, Twitch Studio really does not like, Excel. Yep. So, that's that. Trying to figure out if there is a way of somehow making this Excel spreadsheet show up. Like, obviously it's capturing something, but it's just not capturing what I want it to capture. Yeah. Yeah. Twitch Studio does not like Excel at all. I'll just close that for now, then. I'll edit this scene and move it all the way over here. Alrighty, so let's get this started. IEEE is not here with me today, unfortunately. Oh, am I echoing? Not entirely sure why that would be the case. Let me check something. Alright, is it still echoing? Okay. Alright. Well, I'm going to take that as a things are okay, and I'll continue. So, let's get on with the show. Now, whoops. This is actually an old solution. I will go and delete that. And let me go and get all these solutions. Copy and import. So, let's talk about this puzzle first off. So this puzzle is called Pranked, because the input is this mess of a molecule. I noticed that If you count up all the spaces on the outside of this reactor, that gets you 32, because there's 10 across, so there's 20 on the two walls above and below, and then there's 6 in the middle because you don't double count the corners. Add that up together, you get 20 plus 12, and you get 32. The output box is 8 times 4, which is also 32. So, turns out there's exactly the same number of spaces in the output as there is bordering the entire reactor. So that's where the inspiration of this thing came from. And, yeah. The metric is cycles times bonders minus 1. Now, I will say, I tested this puzzle with many bonders at first. My very first solution to this was actually to an older version of this puzzle with, I believe, 13 bonders or something ridiculous. And I thought that puzzle was too easy, which is why I limited the number of bonders to be 8. I think it was either, no, it was 12 bonders. Yeah, I added 2. There used to be 2 bond plus only and 2 bond minus only bonders in a previous revision of this puzzle, which I removed because I thought it was too easy. Instead, what I did was I added more quantum tunnels. That previous version of the puzzle only had 2 quantum tunnels, and I added 2 more to get 4 quantum tunnels because, well, number one is because it was a big community edition feature that didn't really have very much exploration done, and another is because I wanted to penalize the use of bonders. I wanted to see, with a limited number of bonders, how quickly can you get this done when you do have the ability to break bonds using the quantum tunnels. And there's a sensor to make logic easier, so you're not doing like a 3-count flip-flop chain that can be a little bit messy at times. So that sensor is there for quality of life. So, with that introduction out of the way, before I begin, I will also mention that the choice of making the metric bonders minus 1, my first solution was with like 12 bonders or something ridiculous, but my later solutions, I tried making one with 5, and I made one with 4. I did not make solutions with 3 or 2 bonders, which is where this oversight came from. I will admit that. I expected that it would be very difficult to get a 2-bonder solution working, but again, I have underestimated the ability for some people who've been playing this game for a decade. And there's some very impressive stuff coming up for y'all. So, we'll begin with BritBoy here. So this first solution is by BritBoy, and BritBoy has 1,920 cycles with 5 bonders, and this gets you a metric of about like 7,500. Yeah. So let's see here. So one thing that I will mention is BritBoy seems to be going for the classical oxygen snake route, where you have this you've got the snaking S curving back and forth. Now, we'll see in future solutions that this is definitely not a efficient way of making this oxygen snake. Turns out, because so much of your oxygen snake is actually like kind of already made, because your input wraps around the entire reactor, but a lot of that input is straight in the output zone, and it's already kind of made there. It turns out that a lot of the solutions that score higher end up using that part kind of as a pre-made thing, and you just add on to that. So overall, that would save a lot of cycles. Yeah, and the bonder use up here, bonders 1 and 2, are used to cut that length 8 stick down. Yeah. That really penalized the score because of the bonders -1 multiplier. It's a little unfortunate. Yep. Some other things that I'll note. Sorry about that. That's me muting and unmuting Discord by accident. Some other things to note about this. There's plenty of sinks in this solution. Whenever you're making a solution that needs to run fast, it is generally a good idea to try to reduce the amount of sinks that you need as much as possible. Yeah, blue's waiting, and then red's waiting, and then blue's waiting, and then red's waiting. They're alternating building this thing. Alright, MS Tang is next. Thought of doing a solution with longer oxygen sticks, but couldn't figure out a good way to get it to fit without the original ring getting in the way. Yeah. That is part of the challenge. And this is... okay. First off, come on, you have a pause instruction still left in here? Slightly disappointed, but alright, so this is kind of the idea where I mentioned earlier, where you have all of this part of the oxygen snake pre-built, this whole C that's just left in the output zone, and that allows you to do things like this, where all you need to do is just assemble all of this stuff into some kind of snake that you then attach onto one end of this C in the output, and then, yep, it's all there is. Now, much faster, 700 cycles, but because it uses 7 bonders, this doesn't score terribly well. The main problem is MS Tang uses all of these bonders to bond the uses this group of 3 bonders to bond this 6 long stick, and then it uses these 2 bonders to bond this kind of brick of 3x6 together before it uses these last 2 bonders to get all of this in place. Wondering if there is a way of maybe manipulating the, these 2 6 long sticks so that you can reuse these 2 bonders and maybe like another bonder here to save on bonders, but yeah, we've got a lot of solutions. 17 people ended up solving this puzzle. So yeah. Overall, we've got sinks still, and some pretty complicated flip-flop logic, which, yeah. And also, yeah, it's mostly the use of many bonders that prevents the solution from being higher scoring. For some reason, I decided that leaving the backwards scene intact was infeasible at an early stage, and it never occurred to me to consider that again. Ouch. Alright, 15th place, Field Armada. Also with 7 bonders. Oh. That is a way you can assemble it, yes. That is a very, very tight rotation right there. I'm gonna see if I can grab Bond Plus, rotate. Right there, that is a very tight corner. Yes, there are some 8 length rotations that you can do. This is one of them. Yeah. And then this is brought together, and then bonded and outputted. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's also, like, you can keep stacking atoms on the sides to see exactly what the rotational limits are. Obviously, I'm pretty sure the one that's the atom over here would crash, but not this one. The one that's one below. Yeah, there's some funky rotations. One of the other things that this puzzle really kind of tested the limits of is rotation of large molecules, because there's almost never a good reason to rotate an absolutely gigantic molecule in SpaceChem. The exceptions are if you're trying to move something from your input to your output very quickly, which is usually like a latency save in a production puzzle. Otherwise, yeah, there's usually not a good reason of putting a big stick in a reactor, because it's kind of a hassle to work with, and it really limits the amount of usable space you actually have. But in this case, you know, when your input is crazy big like that, yeah, kind of force you to do some crazy rotations. But yes, 663 cycles. So it's a faster 7-bonder one. Astro Nelson is next. Now this one actually uses all 8 bonders. The only thing is, it's actually 550 cycles. So because it is a good chunk, at least good enough faster, it doesn't get the extra bonder use ends up working in his favor. And here you can see another isomer of the oxygen snake being made. Yep, and another giant rotation with that L piece. Pretty interesting. You usually don't see output and then input on the same cycle. Yeah, let's see here. Let's put a pause right here. Output and input on the same cycle. Especially with those atoms not moving in the output zone, makes you do a double take. Pretty neat stuff. Is there a reaction error? Okay, Big Mango Head noticed something weird happening with Zig's solution. I will take a look in that in a sec. So this is Foxadecimal solution with 6 bonders. Interesting confirmation that we have not yet seen before. Yeah, one of the nice things with this solution is that both red and blue wattles are moving pretty much all the time. They're not really waiting on sinks all that often, but it is a little bit strange to see them kind of hand off work and then go and grab another piece from the other side of the reactor. So overall, I'm pretty sure there's probably better, more efficient usage possible, but this is one way of doing it with fewer bonders. $656, but because it's 6 bonders, it scores better. Binky is up next. 4 bonders. Yep, making the old classic oxygen snake thing again. So that's definitely where this solution would lose out on cycles. It's using 2 of the bonders to debond that thing over here. Canonical snake. So it is a good chunk slower, 1047, but because it's 4 bonders, it scores just a little lower. A score of pi, 314,199. Not 5 though, but oh well. Only an error of 0.4. Yeah. Anime is up next. Now that's a lot simpler. That's pretty elegant, if you ask me. Yeah, unfortunately it is 7 bonders, so it gets hit by that bonder penalty pretty hard. Yeah, so because it's bonders -1, people who managed to do a 2 bonder solution got really pushed up in their score. 405 cycles. Fastest so far, but it is 7 bonders. Yeah, so ideally, what I should have done is instead of making it bonders -1, it should have just been multiplied by bonders. That way, instead of being a 100% penalty to go from 2 bonders to 3, it would only be 50%, and then each additional bonder you use decreases accordingly. Razoons is up next at 10th place. Now this is a 3 bonder solution, and you'll get to see, yeah, so if you wanted to use a low bonder count, you start to have to incorporate things with shifting around or really moving this output C shape. Yeah, because your workspace is pretty limited over here. But that is how you make do with fewer bonders. 910 cycles is, in the grand scheme of things, kind of slow. Sorry. But 3 bonders definitely pushes the score up. Let me see if I can reread that comment, as I missed it. 2 bonder solution was over 6,000 cycles, so it really didn't matter. Yeah, the main problem is if someone gets a really good 2 bonder solution, it really limits the number of points that other participants get, because it's going to be their metric divided by your metric, right? So if their metric is incredibly small, then a lot of people don't get many points at all. That's the big problem. So, yeah. Jojo is up next. 9th place. Now that is that 8 length rotation again. Now this loop is actually pretty decently fast. Is this the new lowest submitted symbols? Let's see here. Yes, it is. In fact, this is the lowest submitted symbols of all scoring solutions. 261. So this is very much faster. The problem is it is 8 bonders. or no, this is 6 bonders. It is 6 bonders. So it is high on the bonder count for sure. Yeah, which doesn't help the score, but it is very, very fast. 261. Hit that drop on red from 3 different directions. Let's see here. It gets hit from up going down, left going right, and down going up. Yeah. It is good symbol reuse, but unfortunately this is not a symbol puzzle. Rotate as a single cycle stall on blue right there is a good touch. While it's waiting for red to grab. Hanging sensor is really not something you see often, but yep, works just fine. Up next, Neutre is up next with a 3 bonder solution and 629 cycles. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted there to be a very good reason for using more bonders, but I didn't want to penalize it this much so that pretty much the only really good scoring solutions were 2 bonders. That is my lampshade. Rather, I guess, spoiler. Because there's a similar puzzle, well, not really a similar puzzle. There's a puzzle called Upscale, Downscale from a few tournaments ago, which was involved making like a big square from a small square and a small square from big squares. And the that puzzle was actually designed to be done in two bonders. Um, and the metric severely penalized things that were not two bonders. This puzzle was designed to be done with more than two bonders, but I severely penalized things that were not two bonders. I was under the impression that two bonder solutions would be harder, but as you will see, there's a handful of people that made it not the case. Neuter, last day solve, let's go. Yeah. Moving this C ended up being one of the things that you had to do to reduce the bonders, and that was one of the tricks to get a really good solution. Yeah. Otherwise, there's a decent amount where some of the Waldos are not doing too much, like red is on this crazy timing loop here while blue goes up here to grab. Manipulate all of this. But yeah. Vipumave. So this is the beginning of the two bonder solutions. Yeah, so let's start from the beginning. This input swap breaks it in these pieces, and the two bonders are up here. Red will grab this giant piece that's still up here and be bonded up here. And then the arms will move and assemble this inner part of the snake using just these two bonders. How? Using this top row to create the long sticks, and then using those bonders to bond them together. Yeah. So, 1,099 cycles, but it's 139 symbols, because as you can see, this is a very complicated machine. So it scores a metric of 1100.39. Now, here's where we break below 1,000. And it's a jump down. Matter Monkey. So, if you put the swappers in the corners like this, you get the C shape out, but you also manage to get some pretty nice shapes to work with. So this shape is kind of reminiscent of, I think it was Aningme's solution, but spawned a little bit differently. And then you move the C over. So this is a two bonder solution. But yeah, this solution is a good chunk faster. Less manipulation of things all over the place. Yeah, one big part of making this puzzle... Well, one big part of the search area for this puzzle is finding the right places to break the oxygen snake so that you can manipulate the pieces efficiently. Be so much slower if I didn't find that last rotation onto the bonder. rotates. So this gets bonded up here. This needed to go up here. Right, yeah. Because you can't put this 3-stick onto the end, because it would collide into the C. Yeah, so this rotation here makes that possible. Alright, next up, Zig. So apparently, Big Mango Head says that when he runs on, when they run, this solution will crash, but we'll see. No crash. No crash. That is strange. Alright, let's take a look at the solution. Rotates. Some L-shaped pieces. Debond, rebond. On a rotate. Yep. And then making this piece like that. And then swap to move that up here. That's pretty clever. Yep, and then the only thing left is to move that C over and drop out. Very nice. I wonder why there's a flip-flop here. Is that just for show? Because you couldn't be bothered to use a redirection arrow? Oh, no, you can't because it has to run all the way over here first. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, this runs in 678 cycles. So we've dropped below 4 digits already. And we still got 4 more solutions to go. Yellow Bunny is up next. Yep. Pretty similar idea, just a little bit different handling of how the L's get bonded together. And then like a really nice loop there to keep swap grab bond to make that little stick there. While blue does a little bit of a timing loop. Under 600 metric. And that's 4th place. So before we go on to 3rd place, let me pose a question. Who of you actually expected the metric to go down to as low as it gotten? Darius1 is here with 529. This is just an efficient, very well use of the limited resources. 2 bonders, a very clean rotate, and more just efficiency is the word, honestly. Yeah, optimized solutions end up being solutions where pretty much both Waldos are doing something all the time. Very little downtime, very good handoff between Waldo to Waldo. And this was beaten by one cycle by GG Gall. It's a completely different technique, of course. Yeah. You can see there's a rather bit of kind of large delay here where red has to run all the way up here to grab the C up there. Yeah, the reset on this one is a little bit oof. But this is still very clean, very impressive. Blue has a little bit of a timing loop down there, I think. Or maybe that's just there to... Let's see. No, it's to save on a rotate. No, sorry, it's to prevent this from crashing in. Yeah. It looks like a timing loop, but it's not. Yeah, but the reset on this is not ideal, but honestly, I probably wouldn't be able to improve upon this anyway. First place, Tough Thought. Coming in under 500 metric at 450. Indeed, congratulations for a very, very well-deserved win. Bond, very, very clean delivery, right, and then it goes straight back into just the loop. Very incredibly efficiently planned out. There's almost, never a time where the Waldos are idling. The sinks, yes, they're there, and yeah, IEEE probably wouldn't like it, but there's a flip-flop up here, but those sinks, they don't take that many cycles, so even though they are symbol heavy, and they do cost a little bit in cycles, they're worth it because they prevent collisions, and sometimes they're just the most effective way of getting cycles where you need them to be. But yes, congratulations, Tough Thought, and honestly, congratulations to GG Gall, Darius1, Yellow Bunny, Zig, Matter Monkey, and Vipu Mave for getting a 2-bonder solution scoring well. That was really not something I expected. When I did my 4-bonder solution, the metric score on that was something like 1600, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure, you can get like a 3-bonder thing that will score well if you get 800 cycles on that. But 2 bonders and 450 metric is very much not where I expected it to go. So, kudos to all of you for really proving me wrong that still, even if you've been playing SpaceChem for years and years and years, never ceases to impress me what you can do in this game. I started playing SpaceChem in 2014, so yeah. Didn't really start doing the tournaments until I think 2018 was my first tournament. But yeah. You know, I wouldn't be where I am today without SpaceChem, and I have a lot of thanks to give to Zach Barth for creating this game. Oh yeah, and I will help him plug that his last game, Last Call BBS, as under the studio Zachtronics, has just been released as of 3 days ago. I have not gotten the game yet. I plan on getting it, but again, I was busy for the past week. So, highly recommend check it out and support Zach if you can. And yeah, congratulations to Tough Thought. Because I messed up the metric, Tough Thought, GG Gull, Darius1, Yellow Bunny, and Zig were the only participants to score above 2 out of 3 points. Yeah. Really didn't mean for the metric to be this punishing, but oops. And yeah. Before we pack up for this this week, let's introduce the Round 2 and Round 3 puzzles. There was no video last week because no results were being done. So I get to introduce the Round 2 puzzle. Delete this. So this is the Round 2 puzzle. It is called Explosions and Fire. Yes, it's based off of the YouTube channel, or rather lampshaded. And it involves this. So this is silver iodide, Ag and I, and this is nitrogen. Pretty self-explanatory. One of the things is you do not have normal bonders, and you do not have sensors. What does that mean? That means that you're stuck with doing bond sorting. You need to check which of these atoms are which based on the maximum number of bonds that they can hold. Now, silver has a maximum bond limit of 3, and iodine has a maximum bond limit of 7. Now, because I'm giving this input in the form of a box, you only need to bond once to hit this maximum bond limit. See? So, that's a hint. Although that's a hint that you probably would figure it out in like a few seconds. Or an inordinate amount of flip-flops. Okay, yes. You can do precognition. What does that mean? It means that every time you input an input in SpaceChem, every time you rerun it, it's going to be the exact same sequence of inputs. Yes, you can use this, but considering that this is a symbols puzzle, I'm pretty sure that's not where you want to go. I'll do a quick calculation for you. You'll need, let's see here, 1, 2, 3 of these inputs to make 2 outputs of each. So you'll need 15 inputs to make all of your outputs. So you'll need to count up to 15 worst case. There might be some simplification that you can do. It really depends on what exactly the sequence is, which, okay, if you're going down that route, that's homework for you. But, you know, that's a lot of flip-flops. And this is a symbols puzzle after all, so not sure if that's where you want to be headed down. And another note is that these bonders, they can only bond plus. You cannot remove bonds using these bonders. You have to use these swappers to do so. Why did I do this? Well, I believe there was only one tournament puzzle many, many years back that gave you this limitation. So it's an interesting revisit, and also we have more swappers now. As for the flavor of this puzzle, again, yes, inspired by explosions and fire. Both silver nitride and nitrogen triiodide are explosives, actually. Alright, so there was a comment. Wouldn't you only need 12? Okay, so the 12 thing. So this is a very interesting game mechanic that I will explain. It means that the inputs, they come in like a grab bag of 12. But those 12 inputs are randomized. So for example, if I had say a mix of, 3 different inputs, it's those 3 different inputs come in ratios that are at minimum, 1 out of 12 or whatever. And those are mixed up in a grab bag of 12. So in any 12 inputs, you can be sure that there's going to be, like say 3 of one input, 4 of the other input, and then 5 of the last input. So every 12 inputs will have that rule, but every bag of 12 is going to be scrambled. So yes, you do need to code for the next 4, because you can't be certain that the four inputs of the next grab bag are going to be the same as the 4 inputs of your current grab bag. Yeah, it's okay. By the way, that 12 grab bag rule actually comes in really handy for some certain RNG-based puzzles. I will mention that because Ascension was a very, very difficult puzzle in, I believe, 2019, in Gwen's tournament. It's the last puzzle, and that puzzle is horrendously difficult. And it involved fusion sorting 3 different elements. Fusion or bond sorting between cobalt, iron, and nickel. These 3. And, no. Sorry, it wasn't cobalt, iron, nickel. It was cobalt, nickel, and copper. Because 2 of them had bond limit of 4, the other one had a bond limit of 5. And then the problem was, okay, now you've got this, how do you separate nickel and copper if you're doing bond sorting, right? Or if you're doing fusion sorting, these numbers are pretty close together, so there was a lot of really complicated stuff. And if you exploited the grab bag rule, there were some really interesting tricks that you could do. So yes, that is a thing. Yes, there are going to be more puzzles with randomized inputs coming up in the future, though because I'm already visiting bond sorting here, you probably won't be forced to do bond sorting after this puzzle. And yes, this is a symbols puzzle, so the challenge is to try to make the simplest machine that can accomplish this. So yeah, have fun with this puzzle. I'm sorry that it is going to be difficult, but again, try to get a working solution first. Don't try to optimize as you solve. That's usually not a good idea. Alright. And the last puzzle that got posted just 58 minutes ago, it's called Semiconductor Refinement. And it is this. Now, this is silicon dioxide, also known as sand, or in this case, so silicon dioxide actually does show up in one of the campaign puzzles, but it shows up as a like a big block, because yes, technically that is how silicon dioxide will actually show up, although it's not 100% accurate. I'll spare you the details, but the TLDR of it is I'm a material science engineer, and silicon dioxide shows up generally as non-crystalline, as sand, because quartz is the crystalline version of it, and quartz does show up the way that's portrayed in the campaign assignment. But silicon dioxide generally forms like these interesting loops of silicon and oxygen, and these loops are kind of a big part of why it's all kind of flowy and glass-like. It is glass, after all. Now, silicon dioxide, at least the purer stuff, is used to make electronics. Like, literally, the computer chips that you're watching this video on, and that you're running this game on. Now, silicon, in the real world, it's refined through a whole bunch of processes involving like repeated distillation to get it as pure as it can be. It's like 99.9999% pure to be able to use it for this kind of application. It's pretty crazy. And in that process, also uses a lot of water. Yeah. And in fact, like, run SpaceChem on vacuum tubes. Anyway, yeah, so modern day silicon refinement is pretty fascinating. I'll spare you the intricate details, but it really is repeated distillation until it's fine enough. Yeah, they're also made out of glass. Vacuum tubes also have a glass cover. But yeah, this is the inspiration behind the puzzle. You have silicon dioxide and you have water. The two main ingredients that you need to make silicon-based electronics. But you might have noticed that the output is very much not silicon. Instead, it is gallium nitride. Gallium nitride is one of those semiconductor materials that's out there to replace silicon. It is what is called a 3-5 semiconductor, because gallium and nitrogen are in groups, the periodic table group 3 and 5, and because of that, it creates this large, what's called a band gap, and that allows you to do some really, really nice things. Sorry, I am one who works in the semiconductor industry, which is why you will see more puzzles inspired by these things. Hint, hint. But yeah, I will mention that gallium nitride. Oh well. I'll put down a cent symbol so you can see everything in here. Gallium is here. It's 31. Nitrogen is 7. Yeah, silicon is 14. Oxygen is 8. And hydrogen is 1, of course. And this stuff is what they're trying to make out transistors and newer computer chips out of. How far is it? It's really hasn't caught up with silicon, because silicon has gone incredibly far. They're hitting, limits of transistor widths are literally countable atoms now, and they're running into all sorts of problems with leakage. Interested in specialist ramblings. Yeah, so that's the main issue. And also another huge issue is power draw with silicon chips. That's why they stopped, as of 10 years ago even, in 2008, In 2008, like they managed to hit like 4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz on a silicon chip, and you might have noticed that the clock speed is not increasing. They're not clocking processors any faster because it'll just dissipate so much heat that it'll essentially melt itself. Now, when I say melt itself, it's not really actually like the silicon melting, but if a processor gets too hot, the dopant atoms that you put into the silicon, they'll start to move. And if those things start to move and diffuse, yeah, essentially your transistors will degrade over time until eventually your transistor isn't really a transistor anymore. Which is why pretty much every computer has thermal throttling, is to prevent the temperature from going up so high that a large amount of diffusion starts happening, because the higher your temperature goes, the diffusion rate will increase exponentially with temperature, with absolute temperature. So that's why thermal throttling is there, to stop your processor from damaging itself with literally these kind of dopant atoms moving and diffusing away. So that's a big concern with higher temperatures. And back in 2008, 2007-ish, they reached a point where they're drawing so much power that they're having problems with thermal management. And that's one of the nice things about the newer chips, newer materials. Silicon carbide is one of them. Gallium nitride is another. Because because of just their material properties, they have a lot higher, like they're a lot more strong and brittle, and this makes them easier to conduct heat. And because of that, it's a lot easier to cool them and keep them at a temperature low enough that they don't melt themselves. Again, melting is not really the right word, but you know what I mean. So yeah, that's why gallium nitride is becoming more and more of a thing in modern electronics. How are they for material availability? Gallium nitride is used in things like blue LEDs, I believe. Besides fusing them from silicon. Yeah, they are used in, I believe, blue LEDs. I believe the first blue LED was something was called like InGaN, which is indium gallium nitride. It's a mixture of gallium and indium, which are both group 3 elements. Yeah, down here. And that gallium is blue in game because it has a bond limit of 3. Yeah. The colors of the atoms are related to the bond numbers, like the maximum bond number. But yeah, so gallium will have the way that they made blue LEDs was mixing gallium and indium to make InGaN. So yeah, that's where it all came from, and hopefully, hopefully it'll be the future. Or, silicon carbide, or graphene, or any of the other crazy stuff that they're looking into nowadays. But yeah, numbers are 31, 7, 14, 8, and 1. And the homework is for you to do the math. So white LEDs. No, it was blue LEDs came first, and then they made white LEDs by just combining all RGB LEDs into one thing. Yeah. I think you might be mixing up with something else. Like UV LEDs exist, and you could put like a phosphor coating on it to make it like shine bright white, but the problem is UV LEDs are actually really, really horribly inefficient. by horribly inefficient, I think it's something like 2 to 5%, maybe 10% efficient. Yeah. Whereas if you look at LED efficiencies of like red or green, it's much, much higher. I don't know exactly what numbers they are. Could go search them up, but you know, yeah. Anyway, specialist ramblings. I'll answer more questions. I'm gonna be active in SpaceChem chat, of course. So yeah, so that is the stream for today. Hope you all enjoy week 2 and week 3. Oh, and one more thing about week 3. Week 3 is a cycle puzzle. Even though it's got symbols times 20, do note that your output is out of 100, so your cycles count is going to dominate your metric score. So please do note that. Don't think that it's a symbols puzzle, because it's still mostly a cycles puzzle. Is there a motivation for symbols times 20? Yes, there is. One of the stipulations for this puzzle is that your solution must run forever. By that I mean you can't have like a waste ball that keeps on accumulating until it explodes. So you do have to, balance your inputs and your outputs, and that's your homework. But the reason why I added symbols times 20 was because I want you, by you I mean all you participants and solvers, I want you to be cognizant of the complexity of that the handling of your waste. If you end up making waste and you need to make that output somehow, I do want you to note that yes, you do need to actually, handle your waste, and I don't want you to just, I'm gonna make 200 outputs, and then, okay, that's my cycles count, and then I'll just cheese the runs forever by making some really, really complicated machinery that takes the waste from 100 outputs and assembles some gallium nitride from that. Because if you're going to do that, well then you actually have to, create a really complicated machine. I want to dissuade you from cheesing that requirement of having to run continuously, and also, generally good cycle solutions also are not incredibly heavy in symbols. There are exceptions, yes, but this is a puzzle that I don't expect to be one of them. And if you do need to handle your waste, I do want to handle it elegantly. And by elegantly, I mean, not using a crazy amount of symbols, because you kind of just procrastinated and didn't bother too much about how complicated your waste handling has to be. So that is the motivation behind the symbols times 20. Yeah. Also, another thing is, your startup cycles really doesn't matter here. If you can save some symbols priming flip-flops, this is a good number to save you the hassle of, So yes, you should look for some symbol optimizations, but also, more importantly, try to make your mechanisms not horribly complicated. Alright, so off to the races. Thank you all for coming, and again, if you have any questions, please post them in the SpaceChem chat. Feel free to ping me, and we'll see what happens with round 2 next week. Bye-bye!